Good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock. If you start tonight's cabinet meeting, the live feed and live stream is now up on the site. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence.
I've got apologies for Councillor Teresa Cullen and Councillor Helen Skinner.
Thank you very much for that. Item 2, any declarations of interest? If anybody realises through any items on the agenda that they may have an interest, please state them as soon as possible. Item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of December 2025, pages 13 to 16. I'll agree that they are true and correct record.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments? If not, then all those in favour? Minutes are now approved. Thank you very much. I'll get them signed. And take the opportunity as well to wish Councillor Chris Carr a very happy birthday and many happy returns of the day.
More cakes in for us all.
This was the hint, you see, now, for him to open his case and give everybody a nice cupcake. But no. Yeah, I'll make sure. I'll make sure that they're all done tomorrow. Right. Sorry, can we move on? On to item 4 tonight. Our scrutiny reviews are set out on pages 17 to 20. The Chair of Scrutiny is here once again, so thank you very much for Sean for coming. But I'll start with Mr. Ward. Is there anything, Jeremy, you'd like to say about the scrutiny reviews?
Thank you very much, Chair. The report is before you. Just to inform you that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will be undergoing their scrutiny of the budget over this 2 meetings later this month. Thank you.
And that's the 19th and 20th of January. Councillor Sean Denham, is there anything you wish to add to that?
Not really. We've not actually had a scrutiny meeting since the last cabinet meeting. And obviously we're all geared up ready for the budget scrutiny, which takes the whole month.
Yeah, thank you very much. In particular, over 2 days I've asked scrutiny to look specifically at the financial settlement this year, particularly the impact of the re-ratable values on national non-domestic business rate. There seems to be some concern being expressed about some of the increases for businesses, and we want to look at the potential impact on particular town centres which are really struggling. We've got a bit of a suggestion to put forward, which we'll make at the budget, but at this time we'll leave it to scrutiny to review. Any questions or comments on scrutiny? Right, if not, then we'll move on to the first of some substantive items tonight, which is our resources and personnel policy. Item 5.1 is a budget consultation set out on pages 21 to 32. It is a noting report. So first of all, I'll go to Councillor Greg Marshall, Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder, and then to Mr Martin Payne, Section 151 Officer.
Thank you, Chair. It is a noting report set out on page 21, but it is an important report as well. I think I'll just draw your attention to two or three things, and then I'm more than happy to, of course, answer any questions. I think the first one is the number of responses. It's slightly down on the last couple of years, but obviously significantly up on you know, the 2019-2020. It's important to us because we are trying and continue to try to demonstrate that we're a listening council. We want to encourage people to contribute, want to encourage people to participate in the democracy of the council as well. So it is important to us in doing that. That said, I think, you know, there is some improvements. I'm not sure exactly you can draw a direct correlation, but there is an improvement in overall satisfaction levels from last year, which had shown a dip. So it is pleasing to see that rebound from last year's overall satisfaction levels. On page 22 at the top, I think you know, you've heard me describe it here before. You know, what the council delivers is, of course, bread, and we try and deliver some roses as well. So the services that people rely on, you know, and that people are keen to see important to their everyday functioning, the collection of waste, their dustbin collection, the other services that we offer as a council, housing. That's what I call the bread. But there's other kind of stuff. There's the positive elements that we want to try and enhance people's lives with as well, and there's significant kind of like response and positive response to the work that we've done at Benley Viaduct, and obviously the community pavilion at Hickins Lane in that sense. So not only are we just maintaining a service and discharging a service, we're trying to enhance those elements where we can as well. On I want to flip, just before I come back to page 27, I just want to flip to page 29, the second paragraph down, which is heartening really, because that also underpins what we're trying to do fundamentally as a policy of the authority, is to maintain this community wealth building approach. That is important to us. We think the housing stock is an anchor. We think that's a community wealth building approach. We think retaining places like the cinema and the square and leasing those out and developing revenue from those as a community wealth building approach. And it's pleasing that the survey has said that, you know, by far that's the most preferred approach for balancing the budget. So we will continue to do that whenever and wherever we can. And I guess then to come full circle back onto page 27 and that kind of listening approach, that's the paragraphs that I'm also interested in post this report. I'll be talking to Councillor Bunn about opportunities for how we can try and align some of the increased expectations around the community safety portfolio and some of those other areas which our residents excuse me, have demonstrated where they want to see elements of increased spending. Some we will be able to do, some we won't be able to do, but we'll look to see if we can try and kind of equalise that balance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Martin Payne.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, through you and really just to say, Councillor Marshall has set that out, you know, really well. You know, we were heartened by the response I think we've had to the consultation, you know, on the back of it. You know, quite a sort of busy time in terms of consultations in the autumn. I think to achieve over 1,000 responses on the budget consultation was a fair achievement. Again, heartening to see some of the trends improving on previous years. and certainly we're going to take some of the suggestions that we've seen in there in terms of making sure, I think residents are keen on us providing effective services, but also keen to make sure that we're managing costs effectively, and that residents are then getting the most that they're getting the best value that they can from what they're contributing and we're delivering. So, yeah, looking forward to putting we're putting the budget together to Overview and Scrutiny Committee this month. Fine line, we're tiptoeing in terms of making the most of the settlement that we've got and the resources we've got, but we think once again it's something that we can take forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments? Councillor McCrae?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick one. When I've looked on here and it says like the younger people, like up to 18 to 29, there's not that many responded. I still think that's what I've been saying for years. It's because we use things that the youngsters don't use.
I know.
Like I know it says on here, that the people don't like communicating with Facebook and Twitter. That's because not many people use that so much anymore. Like my daughter always says, and I've said it loads of times, Facebook's for old people. I use Facebook, but we get told Facebook's for old people. The youngsters, maybe these people that we're not getting many responses from, it's because they use other forms of social media. And I know it's difficult for the council to be on these things, but we need to be because we're missing out. And, the views and what these youngsters think, it's important, isn't it? Yeah. And when you've only got just over 30 odd youngsters replying to a consultation, when there's thousands out there, a lot of them are using, I'm not saying Snapchat, I think that's a different thing, but like TikTok's what they use, or going into the youth clubs and talking to some of the youngsters, because a lot of the youngsters in the youth club, they are over 18, not most of them, but there is some in there. So it's just finding different ways and moving with the times a little bit to try and connect with the people that's out there, because they ain't waiting for us. They're just going to carry on using what they're using. And I know what happened. The council turned around and go, oh, we've got a TikTok page now. Then everyone jumps off that and goes on something. No, it's hard to keep up with what the trends are. But at the same time, I guess there was a point where someone probably sat in a meeting and went, council using Facebook and Twitter, that's never going to happen. But we did, didn't we? We started using it. So I do think we need to move on to these other things to get the views of the youngsters, because it's really important. But how you make that happen, I don't know.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Councillor Moore.
Yeah, it's a good point, Rich. I'll have a chat with Sarah about how we can broaden engagement, and I don't think, I'm speaking off the cuff here, I don't think it should be too hard in that sense to try and broaden engagement. I think that just the final thing, Chair, I wanted to say was page 31 as well. We're talking about marked improvements. That we should be encouraged by that. There is a marked percentage improvement there around the climate change approach policy of the council.
Yeah.
It isn't insignificant in the grand scheme of things. It isn't insignificant that there's a 6 percentage point increase, favourability increase in terms of what we're doing around our approach to climate change, and I think that should give us encouragement to continue in that direction.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Councillor Bunn and then Councillor Vanessa Smith and Councillor Rowan.
Thank you. Yeah, I welcome your comments at the beginning, Councillor Marshall, about community safety portfolio. I'll be holding you to that later in the year. Thank you. It's on record now, so it's good to hear. Because I think it is something where we do need to put some more resources into that. We do have problems that a lot of the services around there are things that are outside our control. They're done in partnership with other organisations, most notably the police, and it's a problem that they're facing on quite a large scale as well. But certainly, it's not something that we want to ignore and disclaim responsibility for. My specific question, though, was more about the sort of demographic data. I was really pleased to see such an excellent amount of returns from Beeston. It's really good, 246, 25%. My concern there, though, is the demographic data doesn't show how this relates to the profile of the borough. So, Beeston, there are a lot of people that identify as living in Beeston, whereas obviously some of these towns and villages are a lot smaller. So it sort of skews. It would be helpful when we're looking at demographic data to see how that relates to the overall profile for Broxtowe. Have we got, actually our population we've got 75% women in the borough and 25% men, in which case that's quite heavily skewed. In terms of ages, do we just not have that many people under 18? Maybe we only have one. I'm pretty sure that's not true. I exaggerate, but it's hard to sort of take much from that data because we don't really know what it's comparing to. Obviously, we can take some things where the campaign is working, where it's not, but we don't know in terms of the reach across the borough how well we're actually doing. There's a few comments on it in the start of the introduction, but not much, so it'd be nice to see a bit more there. But yeah, like I say, it was good to see the sort of overall the positive trend, and like I say, those things that need working on, we'll make sure we do that for the next one. And I look forward to seeing the increase in 2027.
Get your retaliation in first. Councillor Vanessa Smith.
Thank you, Chair. It's really interesting. It's always interesting to see the feedback on this, and there's definitely really pleasing things and some things to work on, and lots of food for thought as we go into the budget period. My comment is actually a bit more general. It doesn't specifically apply to just this report, but when we get cabinet papers printed in black and white, can we please have graphs with cross-hatching and things to differentiate the different figures rather than just colours, because it's very difficult to differentiate between the different things and read the key. And it doesn't just apply to this report. There are other reports the same, but just wanted to put that on record. Thank you.
That will be done. Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I disagree with Councillor McRae. There's a youngster here that uses Facebook quite regularly, so don't make these sweeping statements which can't be necessarily supported. But coming to the way in which the report is set out, I take the point about the graphs, but it would also be useful if the comparative data were set out in the form of tables. It is in part, but it's in text. Under balancing the budget, for example, and satisfaction with services. That really needs, and it needs to be on previous years as well. And I just wonder if it's a deliberate attempt to hide things. I don't know. I mean, I'm being very suspicious, of course. But you see, there's only half the story here in the narrative. Yes, there has been an improvement in a number of areas, but it's nowhere near as good as it was when the Conservatives were last in control. And I think it might have been helpful if you had have said in the narrative, we are aspiring to be as good as the Conservatives. We'll probably never get there, but nevertheless, it's an aspiration that we seek. And, you know, I have, and I say this every year, that a degree of cynicism about these budget consultations. I know legally we have to, and people jump down my throat then and say, oh, you don't want to consult with people. Well, I'm not so sure that people want to consult with us, judging from the number of responses that we've had. It becomes a somewhat fatuous exercise, because it's all summed up, isn't it, really, on page 29 at the bottom. Communicating with the council. Respondents ask whether they feel the council listens to them. And you see the figures there, and if I read through, I can see almost, even almost 25% agreed or strongly agreed, which means 75% didn't agree that the council listens to them.
I didn't say that.
Strongly. I know it doesn't say that.
Strongly.
I know it doesn't say that. And this is what I'm getting at. The data is couched in language that is perhaps a little bit confusing. And I project that further, because when you ask residents, and where are we? Balancing the budget. Yeah, balancing the budget. Well, that's going to be quite easy this year, because the Broxtowe MP has told us that you've got millions more to spend. So that will be no problem whatsoever. The MP for Kimberley and Nuttall and Watnell and Australia, I think, has been rather silent on that. Perhaps he's got a bit more sense than to try and say something that clearly and manifestly isn't true. But balancing the budget, the least preferred option, more or less, is increasing the council tax. And what's going to happen when it comes to the budget? The council tax is going to be increased. So is it any surprise? In fact, the surprise is that 25% almost 25%, think that this council actually listens to them, because they are telling you, 92% are telling you, they don't want their council tax to go up, and you will be saying, tough. Despite this big settlement that we've got, we are going to put up the council tax. Now, there's a lot of work that needs to be done from the basis of these figures. And I look particularly at the areas, Chairman, where this, I keep having to flick through. I think this is designed to confuse, and it certainly succeeds a lot of the time. Areas for improvement. Where are we? Dissatisfaction, near the bottom of page 25. Public car parks. Well, that's hardly a surprise when you put charges on them that there's that residents think there's needed to be improvement. Community safety. Now, I have for a long time been concerned about the role of this council in community safety, and clearly residents agree with me. Now, I know there is the argument that it is a team effort, if you like. It is a partnership effort. But I think the time is now right for a detailed review of the whole of community safety, how much it's costing us, what it is actually achieving. And it may be that people's expectations are far too great and we can't deliver, and in which case we need to look at that in its entirety. Street cleanliness is a matter of some concern, and I know driving around that there are issues. And if you recall, I did suggest when we presented an alternative budget last year that we increase the amount of money available for street cleanliness. And unfortunately, graffiti is a plague. Certainly it's affecting my area much more. We've got antisocial behaviour, which feeds into what I was saying previously. So I don't think you need to be too satisfied with these figures. There's still an awful lot of work and improvement to be done, and we shall keep challenging you on this until the next elections or the council's dissolved, whichever is the sooner.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marshall, that contribution.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for that, Councillor Owen. I think you've read your report wrong again. I mean, again, of course, I say on page 25, what you failed to point out when thinking that public car park dissatisfaction was linked to the increase in charges was the actual level of dissatisfaction has decreased since we introduced the car park charges. I don't know whether that was deliberate oversight or you just couldn't quite grasp it. I think you'll understand. Obviously, we've got the budget meetings in the next cycle, and our council tax proposals will be identified within there. Crucially, of course, and the crucial indicator will be is whether our council tax proposals for council tax are above or below the cost of living inflation levels, CPI or indeed RPI, and that will be the real marker about whether we are listening to residents in that sense as well. And I guess when you come on to that, the issue will be that fundamentally you don't hold much truck by this, and that's okay. That's okay if you don't want to try and help people or try and listen to residents. That doesn't surprise me. We will. We will continue to try and have consultations, and where people make recommendations or want to engage with us or want to try and talk to us as councillors about improvements, we'll listen to them, and we will continue to do that. Now, if you don't want to do that, that's all right. It doesn't surprise me, but we will continue to do that. If it's one person wanting to engage with us with suggestions, we'll do it. If it's 500 like it was under your tenure, or if it's 1,000 people now, or indeed more than that, we'll try and keep doing that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Carr?
Yes, one or two things. Of course, putting council tax is going to be a very something that's the least favoured option. You know, a lot of people will say, yes, I don't want my council tax to go up, but by the way, I want my services to remain the same. Yeah. You don't see them saying what you're going to cut if you don't put the council tax up. And of course, it's going to go up anyway because the people, the white knights on horseback who strolled into power last May at County Hall with the promise of finding cuts everywhere and to reduce council tax are going to put council tax up by the full amount, and not only that, they've increased spending more than what they inherited. So that, you know, we need to bear that in mind. And with regards to community safety, why bother upsetting the apple cart now? It performs a brilliant job. We're going to have a lot of upheaval in the next few years anyway. Why start the upheaval now? So, as chairman of governance and audit, I would not, and standards, I would not support a review into community safety, or indeed a wholesale review of any of our departments at the moment.
So if I just take time to answer that, I think particularly with the abolition of the Police and Crime Commissioner and the assimilation of powers under the elected mayor, I think there is a case for looking forward, probably 2 years' time, to look at the whole way which community safety is delivered. I mean, I understand the abolition of the Police and Crime Commissioner came with 12 hours notice for the staff, which was highly distressing and highly upsetting for people. But we are concerned of the impact that will have on community-based projects, particularly community-based initiatives around crime, because it's not just about resolving crime, it's about access to services and access to education and to training and opportunities and employment and housing. There's a whole raft of issues that are interrelated with that unfortunately for us, particularly in Eastwood, when we've ever asked for any funding from the mayor for Eastwood, we've been declined. You know, so there is concern around what will happen in the future, and there's also concern around what will happen with the closure of UK SPF funding, particularly that's targeted towards training and giving young people the opportunities for access to employment and training. So there are a number of key issues on there that need to be carefully considered. And I think, as I say, the impact of the abolition of the Police and Crime Commissioner will be one, certainly looking forward for the next 2 to 3 years, it will become extremely interesting to see how lots of these community-based projects are going to be funded. But I don't want to steal your thunder, Gabby. Gabby, I'll go on.
Yeah, I was just going to come in quickly as portfolio holder for community safety. Minor correction, Melon. I know you don't like them, but I had to do one. It was a matter of literally an hour's notice for the staff before the public's notice, and that was only because the announcement got delayed. So, yeah, I think what we'll be doing is like some sort of midway point between the two. Like all of our portfolios are always looking at what is working and what isn't working, what we can improve, where areas need to be developed further, what is working well and can be extended to other areas. And that's something that is, I say, it's going on within all portfolios. It's definitely happening in community safety. There are a number of things that are impacting how it works, and we're always looking at how we work with other authorities and other partners to make sure it works well for us. I think the reassurance I'd give Councillor Owen is that compared to many of the portfolios, it is one which has a substantially smaller budget. Martin might know the figures off the top of his head, and we do use that budget extremely efficiently. And I think if you look at the last report that came to full council, you can see the wide range of measures that fall within that community safety portfolio and all the different areas that we're working on. I think the key point to take away from this is that maybe we're not quite putting enough resource into that, and a relatively small increase in a small change in our finances can put quite a significant increase into the budget for that portfolio. So it's something that we can put some more resources into and hopefully get some better outcomes for people locally. And let's say, I know Councillor won't want to hear it, but a lot of that is partnership working. But it's also really important, like I say, to make sure that we're playing our role in that we're doing everything that we can for our residents, and that we're working closely with those partners on their responsibilities to make sure that we understand, what they are struggling to meet and how we can make sure we fill that gap. And it's certainly something that I'll be taking forward over the next 12 months. And like I say, I'm sure we'll see an improvement in the next report. Otherwise, I'm sure Councillor Owen will be pointing it out to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. But as I said, the issue that I'm most concerned with is the ability for partnerships to attract funding through what is now the Police and Crime Commissioner's office. And there have been many community-based initiatives in Beeston, in Towton and in Eastwood and Stapleford. that we are extremely concerned about the long-term future for projects such as that. So it is something that we'll be keeping a very close eye on and ensuring that we lobby very strongly for a share of resources to be brought back into our communities. But are there any further questions or comments on the consultation? No, if not, then it's a noted report, duly noted. Next item is item 5.2, which is the Treasury Management and Prudential Indicators 25-26 on pages 33 to 52. And again, you'll see on page 33, it is a noting report. So what I would do, I'll go straight across to the portfolio holder and then to Martin Payne as before to introduce the item and to take questions or any comments that may need any further reference back. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, this is a usual report, but again, another important report. Particularly, I guess, the bottom two paragraphs on page 33, and I think there it says, you know, although it's understated, it clearly says that there are no issues of non-compliance both with the Code of Practice of Treasury Management and the Prudential Code for Capital Finance, and that's important when you then look, of course, to page 38 and 39, of course, and our borrowing and our debt activity and what it's funded, and of course the market valuation of our council housing stock, which we have now regularly included as part of our as part of our report. The other thing I'd say, just the observation is, the extensive economic background and financial market kind of narrative, of course, which shows, the frailties of how even local government finance can be beholden upon the international markets, and the sooner we try and regulate those markets a bit better to reduce the exposure risk to local government, I think the better.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the interesting comments there are on page 37. We talk about financial markets improve, but risky assets have generally remained volatile. I think that's a bit of an understatement. Sometimes watching movements on money markets, volatility seems to be the norm these days. But over to you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks again, Councillor Marshall, with that. I mean, again, I think it picks up a really interesting point there that, we're seeing, the Bank of England is reducing the bank rate. We're seeing it slowly and gradually sort of coming down, but that's not automatically reflected then in the markets in terms of what we can borrow at and gilt yields and the like. And I know it causes as much frustration, at a time when we're trying to look for opportunities to borrow and to reschedule some debt that we've got maturing, that we're just not seeing those rates. In fact, ironically, there's times when rates are actually edging up.
If I can just interrupt you for 1 second there. What I find interesting, if you look on page 37, we talk about cut the bank rates of interest in May from 4.5% to 4.25%. You'll be delighted to know that as a New Year gift, HSBC cut its mortgage lending rate and was the first bank to do so since the cut in May. So it's taken the best part of 7 to 8 months to come through. Market raises, they manage to get on your bill within 2 weeks, but when it's a more slighter reduction in interest rates, it takes 8 months.
And again, reflects the market, reflects the cost of borrowing as well, and it is. I mean, in terms of our headline figures, again, it is a mid-year report, and again, maybe slightly later to cabinet this evening than I would have liked, but again, in terms of the first 2 quarters, our overall debt has slightly reduced, but that will increase as we move towards financial year end again to reflect the fact of the investment we've got within the capital programme. Although debt's, like I say, Councillor Marshall pointed out, although debt is over £100 million, it is effectively linked to the value of assets that we've got on our balance sheet. Market valuation of our council housing stock, for example, is well over £600 million. Probably on an open market is more than that. So again, within that context of debt that we have, it is something that we're managing within where we are with our assets. Incremental increases in terms of the average rate that we're paying on our borrowing. Again, some of the earlier loans that are maturing related to housing finance reforms back in 2012. We've got lower rated preferential debt that is now maturing that we're having to replace. And again, unfortunately, the market is, we're paying at least 1% higher than loans that are now being rescheduled. In terms of investments, again, I think reflecting the fact that rates, certainly when you're investing, come down quicker than rates when you're borrowing. But we have, good cash flow management in the year. We're up at around about 350,000 by the half year stage, which is it will be above the budget that we've set. So that's working well. And again, just as always, sort of tipping a nod to the council considering its environmental, social and governance aspects. So ESG with its investing and banking. And again, we do try to prioritise counterparties with high rated ESG. And there's no significant impact on our yields when compared to other options. So, we're achieving well there. And again, I think overall, going right back to what Councillor Marshall said right at the beginning, I think the positive results that we've sort of shown with these indicators and treasury management activities are indicative that our investment plans are prudent and sustainable. So, thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Can you take the opportunity as well while we're being live streamed just to clarify the situation regarding the rating of banks, that we do not invest in any ratings under A or even AA plus. So there is minimal risk or minimised risk to public funds by prudent borrowing and the way which treasury management is carried out within the authority. Any questions or comments? Councillor Ryan, did you want to come in on this?
Yeah, just a comment. It's always have to bear in mind that when interest rates drop, interest rates for investors drop as well, and if you're a poor pensioner like me, the little bit of money you've got saved, you get less return. So it's have to turn the heating down even more. Well, it should. It should. It can be the difference between economy and business class when I'm flying. Anyway, that's a separate issue. My poverty is a separate issue. On page 49, the capital expenditure and financing. It always concerns me that it doesn't indicate very good forward planning if we have a capital programme where we've got 31 million that we've got to carry forward. I accept that when you have a scheme, maybe a significant scheme, there can be delays, but year after year we're having to carry forward schemes that have not been completed in that financial year. And I know that we have a reserve list of things that could be done. And I just wonder whether or not those things that are on the reserve list might not be deliverable quicker or more realistically or more certainly than those other capital programmes where we clearly haven't been able to deliver for one reason or another, and whether or not more thought needs to be going into drawing up the capital programme so that it is deliverable within that financial year. And if it's not, then we need to be putting things in that are more deliverable so we don't have this repeat situation year after year.
Do you want to come back on that?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Owen makes a really good point, and again, I know it's something that we've discussed at different meetings as well. Some of the figures, certainly in recent years, have been skewed more linked to the sort of significant capital grant funded schemes that we've had, particularly with regeneration, that are being delivered over multiple years, and we've put larger sums in terms of the grant funding in sooner, and it has created underspends at year end, and this year's programme is, whilst it's running at an acceptable level in terms of delivery, there is likely we run the risk of there being a carry forward at year end. But similar with those sort of multiple year schemes, similar with some of the housing delivery projects, where again, there can be significant budgets put in for one particular scheme that can then take quite some time to to deliver, and once it does move, you can soon have £1 million scheme out the door and delivered straight away. So yeah, I fully take the point in terms of making sure we've got our budget profiling right. We've got a good mechanism through Cabinet to revise the capital programme during the year, which we do and do take advantage of as well to have that in-year sort of review and scrutiny. I think in terms of some of the reserve items, I think certainly the items where we've got the underspends and we've had the carry forwards, the large majority of those have been linked to capital grants. Some of the items that we've got on our reserve list at the moment would be actually funded from the council's own resources, and therefore there's not particularly the spare resources available as yet to bring those reserve items into the main programme. But good points made.
Thank you very much. Is there any further questions or comments? Councillor Bond.
Thank you. I've just got a quick question on something. On page 38, there's a list of the current loans that we're borrowing. It has short-term loans and it has long-term loans, and it seems to show that the Bramcote crematorium loan is now paid off. But then on page 41, where it talks about short-term borrowing, it talks about comprising the continuing loan from Bramcote crematorium and the loan outlined further above. Is that because there is a further loan, or what? Those two sections don't quite seem to match up.
Appreciate the question again through you, Chair, and again I appreciate the actually reading through it and telling them up. So no, thank you. Yeah, it becomes a bit of a timing issue. The short-term loan with Bramcote crematorium is actually where Bramcote crematorium has surplus balances on its bank account, that we bring those investments into our investments so that the crematorium can sort of enjoy some returns on its position. The timing of this payment comes shortly after we have the distribution as part of the surplus distribution that the crematorium makes to Broxton and Area Wash, and we've actually utilised that investment at that time to pay it up, but that investment is now building again. So yeah, come year end there will be a figure in there again, and it's something that we just do as a matter of business as usual, as it were. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any further questions or comments? If you'd like to pass on my thanks as well, Martin, to all your team in Treasury Management. I know people generally skip over their reports, but they do a cracking job under difficult circumstances. So thank them most sincerely on behalf of the Cabinet for the work that they do. We're on to first of the, that's just a noted report, duly noted. First, the Economic Development Asset Management is the infrastructure funding statement 24-25 as set out on pages 53 to 74. Lengthy reports that shows the amount of infrastructure investment that the council tracks through things like new development and other projects. So over to Chief Executive will take us through this report.
Thank you, Chair. This is a regular report to Cabinet. It's a summary of the position around Section 106 agreements through planning agreements that the Council is party to. And what the document shows in the appendix is all the monies received in 24-25 and all the various expenditure related to those agreements in some detail. So table 3.1.2 shows what 106 agreements have been agreed related to different areas of expenditure linked to that development. So you've got transport, education, health, etc. And then you've actually got in 313 non-monetary contributions as well relating to those 106 agreements. And then further on from the appendix, you've actually got the actual money received, because there's a time lag between the agreement and when the money comes into the council, because it's linked to the pace of the development. And then to complete the picture, we've got in 3.3.1 what we've spent that development money on in terms of some detail in the table. And members will probably recognise certainly a lot of those improvements in 3.3.1, because they do remind me of the reports that have come through Cabinet. And then finally we've got unallocated amounts in 3.4. So it summarises completely where the money is coming from and where the money is going for 24-25. Thank you.
Before I throw it open to for members' questions, just a couple of things I want to point out to people in particular. If you turn to page 62, you'll see the land east of Country Lane, Bramcote. That's the 51 sites, and I understand the first tenants will be taking advantage of the new council housing on the 16th of January, or programmed to take 16th of January, which seems incredibly quick, the way that development's been developed out, and I'm really delighted to see it. But in particular, I wanted to draw your attention to some of the narrative where we talk about the risk, and that's on page 53. Whilst we said it's got no significant challenges to scheme, one of the issues that we are really getting concerned about is the viability of challenges that come through the planning process. And very often we see an application passed with a Section 106 agreement, and then suddenly, you know, further down the line we find out they've appealed on terms of viability, and there needs to be a much better way of strengthening this. And I want to again take the opportunity to plug for the fact that I'm very much in support and very, very keen on seeing us move to community infrastructure levy as opposed to Section 106 agreements, because again, the strength of the still legislation is far better, particularly when defending against appeals, than the Section 106 agreements. So I'm just going to keep carping on about that until, you know, we get that transition moved forward. But it is now starting to be a real risk, the number of appeals on viability that are coming forward. It's a whole new industry that's been created. Are there any further questions or comments on infrastructure funding statements? Sorry, Philip, do you want to come
Yeah, I want to ask a question actually. On page 65, I note there that in total, where we have a total number of school places, there are a mere 25 school places, 22 secondary, 4 post-16 and 1 specialist school place. Now, the number of sites under development is going to deliver several hundred houses, many hundreds of houses. So I'm surprised that there are so few school places that have been included in the Section 106 agreement. And my question really is that the total number that the County Council have asked for as part of the Section 106 agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is very disappointing, considering the need. But I'll not further comment on that.
Yeah, well, that's fine then, because it is disappointing. It certainly wouldn't have been in my time, but still. I know that there has been a drop in the primary school numbers, and so I can understand that there may not have been that demand, although I find it a little strange. But certainly at secondary school level, I find it particularly strange and very disappointing.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Any further questions or comments on asset management? Okay, that's again, that's just a noted report, duly noted. Item 7.1 then is park standards set out on pages 75 to 98. As the portfolio holder isn't here tonight, I'll move straight on to Emma Giorgio at the back there, who's going to take us to the report. This is just a noting report yet again. However, over to you, Emma.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So this report provides members with an update on the results of the 2025 Parks Standard consultation and the progress being made through the Pride in Parks programme. The Borough currently manages, as members are aware, a significant portfolio of parks, open spaces and local nature reserves. Maintaining a consistent standard across these sites remains a key objective. Each year, 20% of the parks are reviewed through the public consultation alongside officer inspections to assess performance against the Broxtowe Park Standard. The results of this year's consultation are set out in Appendix 1. While overall standards remain largely positive, the 2025 consultation highlights some obviously clear challenges. Engagement levels were lower than in previous years, and a small number of sites did not meet the minimum standard. These results are disappointing, but provide important evidence-based direction for where targeted improvements and management action are required. Encouragingly, many of the sites identified as underperforming have already benefited from or are scheduled to receive investment from the Pride in Parks programme. And since 2018, over £2 million has been invested in parks and open spaces using a combination of council funding and external contributions. Now, Appendix 2 sets out both the scale of this investment and the improvements delivered, particularly in relation to accessibility, inclusive play provision and wider infrastructure. Now, looking ahead, work is underway to refresh the existing play strategy into a broader play and park strategy, and this will take a more holistic approach addressing play, accessibility, paths, seating and biodiversity, which will be brought back to Cabinet following public consultation later this year. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. There are a number of obvious questions, and just to repeat one that I've already asked is, how come then we needed a qualities impact assessment for cemeteries but not for parks? Perhaps one day somebody will give me an proper explanation for that. But for the rest of you, any further questions or comments? Councillor McGrath first, then I'll go to Councillor Sean Danheimer. And then, yeah.
Yes, Chair, thank you.
There's a lot, so I'll watch this.
I've only got two, Emma, and obviously Orchard Field was one of the ones that was bottom of the list. If we have got any plans, and I hope we have, because most of the parks in the borough are fantastic, to be honest, but if we have got any plans, I'd appreciate if you also involved the town council and all that, so there's an input from everyone, because at Orchard Field in particular is renowned for its flooding, right? And when I was county council or whatever, I did have numerous meetings with the county concerning at the bottom, Vessel Lane, which flooded and everything like that. And there was talks about us doing something down there to alleviate a lot of the down at the bottom that's, as we'd call, sodden. And I think we need to take a lot on board and look what we could do to Orchard Field, because it was going to be also part of the HS2 development as well, wasn't it? Or there was talks of it with roundabouts, this, that and the other. The other thing as well I'd like to mention, Hickins Lane, and I've spoken to Jonathan about that as well. There's still some things that we need to improve on there, especially at the footpaths. Some of them are still flooding. I don't know whether it's coming out of the town's deal money or whatever, but we need to have a look at that as well, because it's no good having a fantastic jewel in Broxtow's crown and we're letting little things get on top of people. That's just a quick one, Emma. Thank you.
Sorry, I've got a number of people who want to speak here. I'm going to just give a clear indication who wants to speak on this issue. I'll take Councillor Carr next, then that Councillor Carr, Councillor Danham, and then I'll come round that way. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to get a little bit of clarity on the Flixton Road. Is this just about the area around the play area, or is it the area behind the houses on Flixton Road and the old railway? And then the other question would be, if it is, I would support there being better lighting along that pathway, because it does get quite dark and it's quite shielded from the street lighting nearby, and if you are walking that path you do have to use a torch when it gets dark, and it can get quite difficult when it's the pathway's getting muddy.
Councillor Steve Carr.
Thank you.
Answer
with regards to Eastcote Avenue, page 85, whilst I'm not the Borough Councillor for Bramcote, I am the County Councillor for Bramcote, and this is a part that I did raise with your predecessor, Emma, and didn't get much joy. So I'm glad to see it on here. A lot of the complaints I had and still get about Eastcote Avenue is the non-availability of play equipment for younger children. And so I think if we can perhaps bear that in mind when we're looking at any plans, future plans for Eastcote Avenue, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Danheimer.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Page 81, Emma. You've got two columns there, fair and above 85% pass rate and good and above. I don't quite understand what the difference is between the two, and how the percentage is quite large between the gap between the two. If you can just explain that, would be really appreciated. Thank you.
I'll come to the end. The worst one by far, of course, is Jubilee Park in the East, but by far that really does stand out like a sore thumb. Councillor Pringle.
Thanks, Chair, through you. I'd like just to say thank you to Emma and the team for all the work they've done just recently along the area from the A609 down through Cossall Car Park and then to around to the bottom of Cossall. And it was really good to see it. But the disappointing bit about it is the access, and I'm not talking about access for walkers and cyclists that want to use it. It's the access that's available to people on motorbikes. And what they've done is that all the work that's been done there, the grass has been ripped up, the footpaths have been torn up. I've reported it to the police. They don't seem to be bothered. They ask you to take photographs, and nothing gets done. But it's just we need to let people get into places, but we need to do it in such a way that people with motorbikes can't get in there. And I've been on since before I joined the parish council in 2015. I've been on about Cossall Car Park. It used to get locked at night, and if I took you for a walk there tomorrow morning, and you find the five pairs of black tights hanging in the trees, and the little envelopes of drug packages and all that sort of thing in that car park, it's just access. If you can stop people that want to do harm, stop them from getting into places, the whole borough would really be a better place to live in because of that aspect. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to come back on most of some of these points? Come back on my first one. Why don't we need an equalities impact assessment, but you do for a cemetery?
In terms of this report, or because this is a noting report, and as far as I'm aware, I wasn't asked to produce one.
Oh no.
So,
okay. Just my sarcasm.
Well, okay. Just to go through the points, in terms of Councillor McGrath's, in terms of Archersfield, that is something that we will look at. Obviously, I've said that we will be talking about the review of the play strategy, and that's something that we can bring into that. That's not a problem. In terms of Hickings Lane, that's something I can pick up with the economic development team. If you're happy with that, Councillor McGrath.
I am. Thank you. I have been as well, but the more you get for your department as well, the better it is.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. So I'll pick that up with the economic development team. Councillor Carr, sorry, I couldn't quite hear your question.
It's about Eastcote Park. Sorry, Councillor Chris Carr.
Chris, yeah, Councillor Chris Carr, yeah. Sorry.
It was about Flixton Road, just getting a bit more clarity on the actual area. Is that the whole area behind Flixton Road and between the old railway line, or?
It's everything that we would be responsible for. Okay. So it would be all of that area.
So just saying I would support the better lighting along the path, just because it can get quite shielded from other light sources, so you can't really see that well when it gets dark.
Yeah, that's no problem. As I said, with regards to Councillor McGrath's question, we are reviewing the play strategy. That is something we're looking to refresh, and we are looking at the wider infrastructure of the parks, because the Pride in Parks programme has mainly focused on the play equipment that needs that we putting into place. But this time we're looking at everything, so accessibility, paths, benches, everything. So we will be picking that up. In terms of Councillor Steve Carr's question, to do with Eastcote Avenue, yes, again, that's something we will be picking up with the play strategy. And I know that Eastcote Avenue has had some improvements already made to it and is programmed to be made to it, so we'll be picking that up. Councillor Danheimer's question, the difference between fair and good. So obviously when we put through the survey, there's I think there's a poor, a fair and a good and a very good. We group those fair and above, so we're looking at that, so that's 85%, and obviously the good and above, there's obviously a less percentage with that. That probably does not make any sense to you whatsoever, but I will come back with you with an email that kind of explains that split for you. All right.
Good luck.
And Councillor Pringle, sorry, Councillor Pringle, access to the canal. In terms of the motorbikes, I know this is something that you have raised before. It is something that we have raised with the county council as well. The difficulty being, if we restrict access to the motorbikes, we are also going to restrict accessibility for those in mobility scooters, wheelchairs and things like that. And it's about getting the balance right for that. But I think there are certain gates that we can look at to address that. But it's something we would need to pick up with the county council.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Steve Coles.
To mention a point on page 95, I have to raise this quite regularly. Sandgate open spaces in Beeston, not Grancote.
It doesn't tell us you are anyway. Councillor, did you want to ask a question? Or?
Yeah, on page 80, at the very top, the consultation was undertaken to evaluate 20% of the parks and open spaces. And then we go on to table 1 and we're told that there are 3 parks in that survey that fail to meet the standard. Do we therefore work up on the 20% sample and say that if it were 100% sample, 15 of our parks would fail to meet the appropriate standard? That would be interesting. I note that 2 parish council parks are included there. The Lane at Alsworth and Brinsley Recreation Ground. I assume we had the consent of the relevant parish councils before we actually did those surveys. Absolutely. And we are somewhat condemnatory, I think, of certainly the Lane at Alsworth on the basis of 4 responses. We're saying it doesn't meet appropriate standards. But when on page 86 we look at the narrative, what people are saying is, well, yeah, I would recommend people to come to this park. I'd recommend people to come to this park, but there are 1 or 2 other bits and pieces that we could do to improve it. Well, I would have thought across the whole of every park there would be bits and pieces that you could do to improve it. I'm sure if you got somebody in another park, they would say that they wanted bug hotels. It's not something that I particularly want, but still, you might find some people that say they want bug hotels. So are we therefore condemning the parks on the basis that people are saying, well, you haven't got a bug hotel there, and I really do love bugs, and I'd like a bug hotel. So it seems to me that we're being a little condemnatory of the certainly the Lane at Alsworth. I don't know so much about Brinsley Recreation Ground because there were 8 people there that made the consultation, but it participated in the consultation. It seems to me that we are making judgments on the basis of a very, very slim number of people that are responding and condemning, in the case of those 2 parish council controlled parks, perhaps unjustified.
Do you want to come back on that, Emma?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So just to come back on those points, Councillor Owen, I am almost certain, should we scale up, we would not have that level of failure. As you have rightly pointed out, there are some very low responses on some of those parks which give a fail, and it only takes a couple of people to give a poor result to actually skew those. It's something that I've asked the team to look at in terms of the survey for this year. And to make something that's far easier to complete, far quicker to complete, and also the fact that we will have officers attend the parks that we will be looking at this year to go out to do face-to-face consultation to kind of bolster those numbers and get a real true sense of that response. In terms of the parish council, yes, we did have their permission. We've obviously shared those results with those parish councils, but what it will help is we do have Section 106 money. So where they're not meeting the standard, we can obviously be looking at Section 106 money to help support those play areas so that there's an equal standard across the borough, and that's really important in terms of partnership working.
Why you're doing this survey, I think with everybody's agreement, it's just like to take account, particularly looking for people with disabilities. It's not just the play equipment. I think there's a general misunderstanding about it's not just the equipment, it's about access to the facilities. If you take a look, for instance, at Jubilee Park's a good example where access is not good for people with disabilities, to say the least. So take that into account as well on your survey.
Let's just ask a very quick one, Chair.
Go on now.
Horsworth Park, play park, is really, really good. I mean, it's an excellent play park. There's lots of equipment there. And I think, it's a meeting tonight, Horsworth Parish Council, I think they'd be quite disappointed that they've got such a bad mark, because they work hard at it, they keep it clean, they're onto the police all the time to make it safe and all that sort of thing. But if you got those 4 people, it'd be interesting to what those 4 people's actual response was, because as you've just pointed out, if the 4 people that responded were completely negative, that's not a true reflection on the state of the park. So it's maybe when it's a small number like that, it'd be quite easy just to say 3 out of the 4 said it's rubbish, 1 said it was very good, or something like that.
Okay. We'll take that into account.
Through you, Chair. So, Councillor Priggett, that's something we can definitely look at and want to have a look at. I mean, it's a shame they just missed achieving the pass mark, because they scored 76 and the pass rate is 85. So they weren't that far off, and with only 4% of 4 responses, it's a difficult one. So we will be looking at that.
Okay. There's no further questions or comments. You'll note that it is just a noting report to note progress today. Duly noted. Moving on then to allocation section 106. Funds are set out on pages 99 to 102.
Yeah, I mean, Chair, this is a straightforward request to members to approve the use of 106, £141,700. And there's detail there for the site for the improvement there, Smithhurst Road. And if you need any further details on the works required, I'm sure Emma can help. Thank you.
The recommendation set out on page 99, we asked to resolve tonight to approve an added to capital programme the cost of 141,700 from section 106 contributions. Is it seconded?
I'll second that. Can I just ask a question as well, Chair?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Chair. If for instance there was a community infrastructure levy, would there be the opportunity to spend this money somewhere that needed it more?
Yes.
I think that's a good example. When you look at the scoring on page 81 of Smithhurst Park, it's a high scorer, and this section 106 money is going to a high performing park in that standard, and I think that's partially due to the constraints around 106.
Yes.
And if there was, of course, SIL legislation, then there'd be an opportunity to I think fundamentally pool some of that money and have it based on need.
More flexibility.
More flexibility.
Yeah.
That's exactly correct. So, anybody else want to speak? If not, the recommendation set out on page 99 has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimously agreed. We now move on to item 7.3, which is the new post of Senior Environment Development Officer, page 103 onwards. And the recommendation tonight, we're asked to resolve creation of a new Senior Environment Development post at grade 9. And that would be partially funded by deletion of the sign fabricator paint and decorator post T20, with the net cost up to 22,000 being met from general fund reserve balances. I move that from the chair.
I'll second that, Chair.
In the absence of a portfolio holder, I'll move straight to the officer.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. So this report responds directly to the increasing breadth and complexity of the work within the Parks and Open Spaces team. Over recent years, the team's responsibilities have expanded significantly. This includes the delivery of the blue-green infrastructure projects, the management of additional open spaces, the maintenance of SUDs, and the ongoing development of major programmes such as the Pride in Parks and Climate Change and Green Future strategy. While the team has worked really hard to absorb this growth, the current staffing structure is no longer sustainable. The report therefore seeks approval to create a new senior environmental development officer post. This will be achieved by deleting the long vacant sign fabricator, painter and decorator role, which has been unfilled since June 2024. The team have absorbed some of their responsibilities and sign making, but this is now being more cost effectively delivered through external contractors. The proposed restructuring illustrated in Appendix 1 provides a clearer and more resilient operational structure for the service. Importantly, this senior post is designed to bridge the gap between the existing environmental development officers and the Conservation and Green Spaces Development Manager. It will provide additional technical expertise and day-to-day operational capacity, allowing the manager to focus on strategic leadership and high-profile environmental programmes. Overall, this proposal strengthens the Council's ability to deliver on its environmental and climate ambitions, support staff development and retention in competitive skills market, and ensures that the service is appropriately resourced to meet current and future demands. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments? Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Emma, for this. I'm 100% behind this proposal. Not 2 meetings ago, we were eulogising about, was it 2 meetings ago or last meeting, eulogising about the blue-green infrastructure strategy, which is not just comprehensive, but I'd suggest kind of, you know, borough leading in terms of its ambition and what we're trying to achieve. And, you know, Emma speaks about, you know, attempts to try and absorb, but it makes absolute sense that if we, not just on blue-green infrastructure, but the climate change work that we're doing, Green Futures, all of those things, it makes absolute sense that the department's probably squeaking now at the edges and needs a bit more resource to do that. So I'm all for, I'm 100% behind this proposal, and hopefully it allow us to consolidate and then go from strength to strength in those other strategies which we are positioning ourselves as flagship of this borough.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments? No, if not, then I'll proceed straight to the vote then. All those in favour? The recommendation for that is unanimously agreed. The final item on tonight's agenda is item 8, Cabinet Work Programme on pages 109 to 110. We're looking at perhaps on the 31st of February adding some additional training courses in there. Myself and Councillor I will be attending a self-assertiveness course because of our shy nature, so both myself and you, Philip, I thought would benefit from additional training in self-assertiveness. But the issues in particular there, of course, the HMO Article 4 directive, which goes to Planning Policy Working Group this week, I think, on Thursday this week, which I hope many people will be in attendance at. I'm certainly making an effort, hopefully, to be there myself to attend. But the rest of the agenda, and of course it will be subject, if there are any news on local government review, that will be added to the agenda accordingly. Or any elections postponed. The recommendation, the work programme, I move from the chair.
Second that.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Vanessa Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was. I mean, we've got some compliance things that we wanted to bring. I was expecting to see those on there. We talked about having that as a regular item for housing on the agenda. So if we could make sure that's included, please.
Yeah, that's been added. Thank you very much for that. Any further questions or comments? If not, the work programme has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimously agreed. And with that, then I'll close the meeting at 7:12 and thank you all for your attendance. And as I wish Chris Carr a happy birthday, just to let you know that I am 70 tomorrow.